Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from one of Spain's most revered saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a spirited doctor of the Church. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week as we read from Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. I'm glad to have you back for another day with Saint Teresa of Avila. When I was a brand new military spouse, I struggled in that role. For me, Kansas was all I really needed. Sure, I liked traveling around to nearby states, but I didn't have a huge desire to see the rest of the world. I did want to go to Ireland, Italy, and maybe England one day, but that was about it. Asia, forget it. Anywhere below the equator didn't really appeal to me. In fact, the only places that did appeal to me were places where my ancestors came from in Europe, Ireland and England. I didn't really feel like the world could teach me too much. So, you can imagine how the military lifestyle really threw me for a loop. Now, the first place we moved was Ohio, which is very similar to Kansas, and that wasn't a huge change for me. But then we moved to the Emerald Coast in Florida. And that's where things changed. Panama City gives you a great taste of Southern living, and I was stretched beyond what was normal for me. The people were very different, the food was very different, the culture was just different than what I was used to. And after the Emerald Coast, we moved to the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert of California, and I again was stretched. The first time I went overseas was to the very continent I never desired to go to, Asia. The first time I went overseas, I went to Israel. And then I even lived in Turkey for 1 year, again, in Asia. I have yet to go to the countries that I saw myself going to back when I was younger. But with each of these places, I discovered that the world is a magnificent, amazing place. And each place helped me to learn new things, appreciate what I have back here in the States, and also helped me to learn that exploring these places causes me to grow in ways that I could never have imagined. A few years back, I was talking to a close family member, and they said to me, "I don't need to travel anywhere. I have no desire to see the rest of the world. The Midwest is just fine by me." And it saddened me in a way that they said this. Now, I do realize that there are people out there that don't care one bit about traveling. I get it if people don't like crowded airports or packing or dealing with traveling abroad. I totally understand. I also realize that not everybody has the means to travel extensively, and that's okay. That's totally okay. But what made me sad about this person's comment is that they were fine to just stick with what they know and what is comfortable. They didn't feel like there was anything really to learn by visiting other places, and that's just not true. At some point, we need to step out of our comfort zone in some way. It doesn't have to just be traveling, but we need to step out of our comfort zone and let ourselves be stretched by other people or worthwhile experiences. Now, after 21 years as an Air Force spouse, now I get excited to see what the next place has to offer and show me. And I look forward to the people that I'm going to meet and what they can teach me. St. Teresa today is going to talk about the importance of learning from others with regards to prayer. And she's also going to share with us some of her distractions during prayer time. Our readings will be from the Fourth Mansion, Chapter 1, Numbers 9 through 10. But first, a word from our sponsor, Chrism Press. Did you know that Catholic fiction didn't die with Flannery O'Connor? Have you longed to read quality Catholic stories that speak to the 21st century? Look no further than Chrism Press. Chrism Press seeks to open doors wide to smart, fun, faithful fiction of any genre. The name chrism comes from the anointing oil used in Catholic sacraments and represents the idea that stories have the power to anoint our imaginations and lead us closer to God. Chrism Press publishes spirit-filled fiction in all genres for adults and teens. So why not join Chrism Press on their mission to bring great Catholic and Orthodox stories to readers everywhere? Visit chrismpress.com to check out their selection of books, and if you use the coupon code Pilgrim15, you can get 15% off your first order. All right, let's begin our readings. Do thou, O Lord, take into account all that we suffer in this way through our ignorance. We err in thinking that we need only know that we must keep our thoughts fixed on Thee. We do not understand that we should consult those better instructed than ourselves, nor are we aware that there is anything for us to learn. We pass through terrible trials on account of not understanding our own nature and take what is not merely harmless, but good for a grave fault. This causes the sufferings felt by many people, particularly by the unlearned who practice prayer. They complain of interior trials, become melancholy, lose their health, and even give up prayer altogether for want of recognizing that we have within ourselves, as it were, an interior world. We cannot stop the revolution of the heavens as they rush with velocity upon their course. Neither can we control our imaginations. When this wanders, we at once imagine that all the powers of the soul follow it. We think everything is lost and that time spent in God's presence is wasted. Meanwhile, the soul is perhaps entirely united to Him in the innermost mansions, while the imagination is in the precincts of the castle struggling with 1,000 wild and venomous creatures and gaining merit by its warfare. Therefore, we need not let ourselves be disturbed, nor give up prayer, as the devil is striving to persuade us. As a rule, all our anxieties and troubles come from misunderstanding our own nature. Whilst writing this, I am thinking of the loud noise in my head, which I mentioned in the introduction, and which has made it almost impossible to obey the command given me to write this. It sounds as if there were a number of rushing waterfalls within my brain, while in other parts, drowned by the sound of the waters, are the voices of birds singing and whistling. This tumult is not in my ears, but in the upper part of my head, where, they say, is placed the superior part of the soul. I have long thought that this must be so because the flight of the spirit seems to take place from this part with great velocity. Please God, I may recollect to explain the cause when writing of the latter mansions, this not being the proper place for it. It may be that God has sent this suffering in my head to help me to understand the matter, for all this tumult in my brain does not interfere with my prayer, nor with my speaking to you, but the great calm and love and desires in my soul remain undisturbed, and my mind is clear. Back when I was Protestant, even when I was not practicing the faith at all, I thought I had it all figured out. In my pride, I thought that in my 20-some years, I had gained all the knowledge I needed about the spiritual life. And I hadn't even read the Bible through yet. Nobody could really teach me anything new, I thought. But when I married my cradle Catholic husband and we started the whole Protestant and Catholic debate, I was consciously made aware that I didn't know very much at all. Everything I had been taught about Catholicism was proven wrong by my husband, and I was very humbled. But that humility opened up a world of new information for me about Christianity, and I soaked it up like a sponge. Right around the time I converted to Catholicism, a friend of mine became an atheist, and she started challenging me. Because I had been lousy about learning my faith for so long, I was woefully ill-equipped to deal with her questions. I tried, but I soon realized that I needed to walk away and educate myself. So I started reading, and I read a lot in the span of 2 years. And mostly, I just read a lot of entry-level, simple books. Good books, excellent books, but just simple, foundational books because that's what I needed. I needed books that would help lay a foundation for my faith. But during this time, I actually tried to pick up the Summa, and I think I got past the first page, and then I quickly shut it and laid it back down. I was not ready for it yet. I still would say I'm not completely ready for it yet. I have read the smaller Summa with Peter Kraft giving his thoughts and commentary on what St. Thomas Aquinas is saying, but the whole Summa, I'm not ready. But over time, I started to grow in my understanding, and I realized that there was a lot of people out there that could teach me, and I was ready to learn. And so I was able to move on after learning from these great authors and saints. I was able to move on to deeper, more spiritually challenging books. St. Teresa says today, quote, "We do not understand that we should consult those better instructed than ourselves, nor are we aware that there is anything for us to learn." She goes on to say, quote, "This causes the suffering felt by many people, particularly by the unlearned who practice prayer. They complain of interior trials, become melancholy, lose their health, and even give up prayer altogether," unquote. Now, at the beginning of today's podcast, I told you that at one time I thought that my worldview from the Midwest was sufficient for my understanding of the world. But that wasn't true. I had much to learn from others that I didn't even realize. I didn't even realize how much there was to learn from others. Like what St. Teresa says, she says we are not even aware that there is anything for us to learn. And that was me. And also, with regards to my faith life, I thought very early on that I had it all figured out. But that wasn't true. I had much to learn from others. And the reality is there's never going to come a moment in this life when we have our faith all figured out. There is always more to learn, more to understand. I mean, we're talking about God here. Why would we think we can learn it all in a few years of Sunday school classes or CCD classes? We can't, and we shouldn't even want to stop learning. Now, with regards to prayer, St. Teresa is showing us again that we need to learn from others, especially if we're in those first mansions and we're getting stuck and we're struggling in our prayer life, which is common. We need to learn from others. Now, one of the ways that we learn from others is by opening up about our issues in our prayer life. She's showing us in number 10 what she is struggling with. And one of the best things that you can do with struggles is acknowledge them and then drag them out into the light so that they can be dealt with. She wants us to understand that struggles in the prayer life are natural. We all have struggles. And if we humbly acknowledge that, we can ask others for help and even have God, shed some light on maybe why we're struggling. That's important too. I mean, just by reading this book, you are seeking help from St. Teresa, and she's teaching us so much. And we often think of the saints as people who have it all figured out and that they never really struggled, but that's not so. And we see that with St. Teresa. She makes that very clear for us here in number 10. She tells us about the loud noises in her head and how it's like a rushing waterfall. But she also says, I realize that when part of me is struggling, when my imaginations, my distractions, the imaginations are the distractions. When they happen, it's okay. My soul can still be very connected to God, and I may not even realize it. And I'm over here thinking and worrying about these distractions. But she says there may be a reason why I'm having these struggles. Maybe God is allowing me to have these struggles so that I can then go on to help other people who are going through similar struggles, and I can teach them and I can explain to them and I can help them understand. We have to remember that very often the saints have learned from other saints, and they encourage us to learn from others as well. Part of the joy of being human is the ability to learn. We should never lose our love of learning or think that we've got everything all figured out. God has given us a beautiful, complex, interesting world, and in exploring and learning from it and from other people, we can come to learn more about God. So we should never be so prideful as to think that there's nothing new under the sun for us to learn. That is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here soon, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.